Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, July 7, 2024. Coming to you live from Ford Media here in Rockville Center. Another outstanding show coming up for you tonight. Mr. Neil Smith, former Rangers general manager, former Islanders general manager, and host of the NHL Wraparound podcast, will be joining us. Looking forward to talking to him. My name is Sean Cuthbert. With me, as always, is Mr. Stefen Rosner. Stefen, how are you?
I'm doing great. How was your July 4th?
It was nice. It was patriotic.
That's great. You want to hear a fun fact?
Yes.
Cole Eiserman and I are both twins.
Is that right?
All right, continue.
Okay, great. Yeah. How was your 4th?
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, you didn't use fantastic, by the way. You used outstanding.
I did. I'm trying to mix up the vocabulary.
I think our rule should be no fantastic until the season begins.
That's a tall order, but we'll try.
We'll do our best.
All right, well, here we are, another edition of Hockey Night in New York to cover the New York Islanders summer, because they actually did get involved in some action, and we will cover it. But before we do, I want to remind you all about our wonderful sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagel. Satisfy your hunger at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. Check out the menu or order online at BlueLineDeli.com. Also proud to be sponsored by Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd and unplug your game at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. And also proud to be sponsored by Razor and Kniff, attorneys at law ready to fight for you. Check them out at razorandkniff.com. That's RAISERANDKENNIFF.com for a free consultation. And folks, if you're hanging out with us in the chat live here, don't forget, if you want to get your questions answered, just hit Questions Brewing. Type in your question, and we will get to it during the segment. So, with the pleasantries out of the way, Stefen Rosner, we talked about the draft last week, and now we get to talk about the free agent frenzy. The Islanders were a little active, to maybe to some people's surprise, maybe to ours a little bit. They brought Mike Riley back on a $1.125 million contract, 1 year, so they get their puck mover back in the fold. Probably lines up against Scott Mayfield on that bottom pairing. And in bigger news, they bring in Anthony Duclair. 4 years, $3.5 million per year. Let's talk about those guys.
First off, Mike Riley, no-brain move to bring him back. He was their best transitioning defenseman under Patrick Roy. He fit the system perfectly. And when we spoke to Riley, or I spoke to him, he was so happy. He goes, you know what? I want to be back. I don't know if they want me back, but this is where I want to be. They fit my game plan. This is a guy that's been bouncing around a lot. Different teams. And again, he joined with the Florida Panthers last year on a 1-year deal. Thought he was going to play. Ended up not playing.
Right.
Joins the Islanders, and he wins a job essentially from Sebastian Aho and Samuel Bolduc, because when Patrick Roy first came in, he said, it's going to be a rotation. Bolduc's going to play. Riley's going to play. And then Riley just said, I'm going to play. And he,
right.
Actions speak louder than words. He came in at the end of the season in the playoffs. He was quarterback in the top unit, taking the option spot. Him and Barzal really had some chemistry in transition. So no-brain move, especially when, he's going to be cheap. Everyone knew that Riley was not going to command $4, $5, $6 million, and he fit. But like you said, the biggest news, which to me was also a no-brainer, is bringing in Anthony Duclair.
Yeah.
Is he a bona fide top-line winger in this league? No. But he brings speed. That's a need. That is a clear need with Horvat and Barzal. The biggest issue last year is they tried so many different players, and Anders Lee might have been a top player at one point in his career, not anymore. He does a lot of great things around the net, but if you take too long to get to the front of the net, chances go by like that. You had Holmstrom going up there, but he wasn't aggressive enough in corners. You had Fashing up there, didn't work out. You had Zizekas, which is great. He brought that speed, but not that finishing.
Right.
So I think Duclair, I'm not going to say he's going to score 30, 40 goals with these guys, but he has speed in transition. He knows how to bury.
Right.
He could help out on the power play, and he's just a guy that understands Patrick Roy. He played for him in juniors, which is why this made complete sense. And it took some time during the day, and we do have audio as to why Duclair is here, but it took some time throughout the day. They signed Riley back. You're thinking, all right, they're going to make a move. They don't have cap space, and Duclair took less money to come back. So this is why Anthony Duclair, from his mouth, on him joining the New York Islanders.
I think we all know that my connection with Pat, and Pat, I think, was, a big reason, for me coming to the island. And, he gave me a call this morning, told me that he wanted me. And, when a coach calls you, tells you he wants you on your team, it's hard to say no, especially when it's Pat, and it's someone that, obviously I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I know him very well. I know his family very well. I played for him. I know what to expect. So I think it was a great fit. in that perspective. And obviously, like you mentioned, with Bo and Barzy, those two exceptional players. I'm looking forward to joining this forward group, and whoever I play with, I think I'm going to be in good hands.
So we had spoken when Patrick Roy got hired. How much would he have a say in roster construction for the next upcoming season? Mm-hmm. And even at the end of the year, when Lou and Waugh spoke, they said they'd work together. This is Exhibit A.
Yeah.
Patrick Roy comes here. Patrick Roy calls a player he once had, a player that could really help this team, and he comes to Long Island and then takes less. So that's the magic right there. No, they didn't get any other top flight free agents. No, they haven't made any trades to get other players or clear cap. But this is clearly, Duclair just said it. The reason he is playing for Long Island is because Patrick Roy called him.
Yeah, which is pretty cool and definitely great for the team that at a very team-friendly $3.5 million per year, I think he probably could have gotten more elsewhere if he wanted to. I'm sure the Islanders weren't the only team that came calling, looking for his services, especially with the performance he had with Tampa. Now, we have to keep in mind that Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal are not exactly Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, and Steve Stamkos, the clientele, if you will, that was over at Tampa. But he was capable of basically being a point-per-game player during that tenure. So who's to say he can't have a career year with guys like Horvat and Barzal if he happens to work out on the first line? Of course, Waugh's going to give him every chance in training camp to fit in with those guys and maybe almost force feed him in there to hope and pray that it happens. But, I mean, you got to figure he's going to be that hopeful trigger man now on that top line.
And again, just the speed. That's the biggest thing is when I spoke to Lou at the draft and I asked him, I said, how important was it to find a player for these two guys, Horvat and Barzal? We had talked last week about how Horvat made some comments after the season, and Lou laughed and said, of course it's important, but it doesn't have to be the best player. It just has to be the right player. And you look here, and Duclair might not be the best player. Clearly wasn't the best player available. Cap reasons, the Islanders couldn't afford those guys, but could this be the right player? Another player who I thought could have been a great fit would have been Jeff Skinner, who ends up signing with the Oilers. This is guys that bring speed. Now, Skinner is not as great defensively as Duclair is. Duclair's not a mastermind defensively. He doesn't have to be with those two guys.
Right.
But just could this be he's just a perfect fit with these guys. And we'll see. But it sounds like he will get every opportunity to play with those guys, and I think it will work out well.
And not only dollar-wise, but 4 years is a sweet spot. He's going to be 29 in August, so it'll take him to 33, which is pretty much perfect, right? He's usually with these UFAs, you're signing them to 6-7 years, and it's usually 2 to 3 years longer than you really want to. But to play the game, to get the guy to come to your team, you got to tack on those extra years. But you got Duclair here coming for 4 years, and it's kind of perfect. So hopefully you get 4 prime years out of him. He plays on the top line. Even if he doesn't, maybe he ends up slotting in on the second line with Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. It's possible. But then you still have guys like Cizikas and maybe Fasching and Holmstrom, depending on obviously how the lineup shapes up, that those guys end up more towards the depth of the lineup where they belong, as opposed to Patrick Roy even having to consider putting Casey Cizikas on the top line.
And that's the thing, and that's why I kept saying it's so important now to add, if they can, financially, add another winger, because it just moves everybody else. We talked about Maxim Siplikov, where we'll get to him a little bit later, but such a question mark where now you have Duclair there. Maybe you don't have to try him. Everyone's saying it when they first signed him. Oh, try him on the top line, This is a guy that had a career year in the KHL, great. But he could be a third-line winger in the NHL. We don't know. And the last thing you want to do, especially for a team that has playoff aspirations, you don't want to be putting people in spots they're not ready for. Again, Pierre Engvall is one of those guys where he can play a second line, but he's much better on the third. If you have to play him on the second line, sure, but if you could get a productive winger that's going to rack up more points than Engvall and play maybe a stronger, more predictable game, then playing Engvall on the third line just helps everybody else out. So I think Duclair was a perfect fit. If they could add more, great. But when you guy like this is the longest contract he's had in his career. 3 years was the longest he had, which was his last contract. 4 years, and that probably played a part in getting the AAV down, but also Duclair doesn't want to bounce around anymore.
Right.
It's tough. It's tough. I don't know his family history.
Put the luggage away.
But yeah, just worrying about playing for your next contract every other year has to suck.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of pressure. And then he was playing in San Jose where, they didn't get many fans to go there and support. He goes to Tampa and, like you said, racks up the points.
Right.
So I think the Island is a perfect spot for him. As he ages, he could drop down, but he'll always probably have that speed. He's not going to eventually be a slow player in this league. Maybe he won't produce point-wise or finish at the same rate, but Duclair's not, he's in shape. He's a younger guy. I think he'll be able to, even if he's a third-line player in a couple of years, bring that speed, whether it's on the PK or just in transition, to help the team.
Yeah, even though he may not have been the sexiest name on the free agent list, definitely a shrewd move for Lou and the Islanders, a guy who can hopefully work into that top six. Like you said, the speed getting a little younger, and 29 isn't that young. It's still younger for the Islanders, right? So hopefully he works out. But the big question now is, before we break for Neil Smith, is are the Islanders done? You look at Mike Riley. Riley being brought back, and maybe that indicates that they're not going to look to upgrade the defense. Maybe they're kind of solid on defense.
Sebastian Aho walks. He goes to
Pittsburgh. Anthony Beauvillier also goes to Pittsburgh. In related news, but then you look at the forward group and you wonder, is it enough, and are they done? Lou Lamoriello hasn't had his I'm finished press conference, whether he does or not. Yeah. But he kind of didn't indicate that, okay, the Islanders are done making moves. Does that mean that something might still be on the table? There's a lot of speculation about Ehlers over in Winnipeg. How's it looking for the Islanders there?
I think the biggest thing and the biggest issue is cap space. Right now they have $900,000 in cap space. If you're looking at cap friendly and wondering why that $900,000 is not what it says, they have Gauthier and Sipilkov both on the roster. I remove Gauthier from that equation. I just think that's how it's going to work. We'll get to the RFAs after Neil Smith. I just want to touch on, though, is that they could bring one RFA back on their qualifying offers, and it's Holmstrom, Ishakov, who might be going to Russia. We'll talk about that as well. Wallstrom filing for arbitration. We'll get to that. But they probably have one spot for three of those guys, and it's probably going to go to Holmstrom. And if that's the case and they bring Holmstrom back, they have no room. They might actually have to shed $200 or whatever, whatever it is to even be cap compliant. Now, over the summer, you could go $8.8 million over, 10%. But in theory, they have to make another move just to become cap compliant. So I don't think the Islanders are done. I'm not saying it's going to be Nikolai Ehlers. I know I reported on Friday that the Hurricanes were trying to get him. I don't know if Winnipeg even wants to move at this point, if they want to wait for the deadline, but the Hurricanes lost Gensel. They lost it on Stamkos. They lost a bunch of guys. Martin Necas wants a fresh start somewhere to be a top power play guy. So could that be a deal? I feel like if that was going to happen and Necas was going to Winnipeg, it would be a done deal. I think the biggest issue with the Hurricanes and that whole trade is Necas has to be willing to sign an extension wherever he goes. No offense to Winnipeg. Doesn't sound like anybody ever wants to sign an extension there. I mean, Hellebuck did and Scheifele did.
Yeah.
Loyal guys. Good for them. But there was a lot of rumors that Hellebuck was going to leave. Those guys are going to leave. And money helps. So it's interesting to see what happens with Necas. But I think Nikolai Ehlers, just getting another winger, and we'll talk later, I have a couple of other names, just moves people in the right spots. Doesn't have to be a flashy guy. You're not going to be able to afford a flashy guy. Moving Pajot, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, or if they even want to do that at this point, they might not. But cap space is an issue. So if anything, the Islanders have to make at least one other move in order to field a team and be cap compliant come the fall.
For sure. Well, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Neil Smith will be joining us.
Hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it. Heat was lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line Combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Attention all artists, storytellers, and creators of all kinds. It's time to make your content stand out above the rest, and Floored Media is the place to make your visions become a reality. Maybe you want to elevate your podcast and add some video, or turn that novel you wrote into an audiobook, or maybe you just need the right space to produce your daily vlog. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, Floored Media has the professional facilities, exceptional staff, and intimate atmosphere to breathe life into your creative passions at every step of the process.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsors. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on, right here on Hockey Night in New York.
That's right, folks. The train rolls on here at Hockey Night in New York. And joining us right now is Islanders former general manager, Rangers former general manager, and Stanley Cup winner, Mr. Neil Smith, and of course, host of the NHL Wraparound podcast. Neil, thank you so much for joining us tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'm up in New Jersey after a 12-hour and 35-minute drive with 2 Labradors in the back seat yesterday, so I'm surviving.
Oh, goodness. Well, glad you made it. So, listen, let's start right off the bat here with the Stanley Cup Finals. The Florida Panthers gave everybody in Florida a little bit of a scare, giving up that 3-0 lead. They end up taking it down in 7. They beat the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid. Maybe just start by the season by talking about the season that they had and winning that cup against the Oilers.
Well, I've been really impressed by the Panthers right from the get-go, and I told a lot of people, including on my podcast, that I really believed that the Panthers were going to win the cup because they had the best playoff team, not because they had the best team in the league, but they had the best playoff team. I find it amazing that they won the President's Trophy 3 years ago. That was the year that Kenville left and Andrew Burnett came in.
Right.
They won the President's Trophy. They got bounced out in the playoffs. They came back. They had a pretty miserable regular season, getting the 8th seed, and then went all the way to the final against a Vegas Golden Knights. But the most amazing part to me was that they came back this season with such vengeance that they wanted to improve themselves and play like they did in last year's, in the 23 playoffs. I thought they played like that all season, and I found that really amazing. And I wasn't surprised when they ended up getting all the way to the final.
And when you talk about that, you talk about the previous years, what do you think the difference was this season that got them over that hump? Obviously, like you said, they had the experience playing against Vegas last year, but what do you think was the difference that they were actually able to go ahead and actually win the cup this time around?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. I think Bill Zito did a remarkable job of picking up the right players at the right time, people that he got like Forsling, and we can go on and on. Mikko Makala from the Rangers, he signed him in the offseason. He got Sam Reinhart somehow, and he did a lot of really good things. And I can only tell you that the year that we won the cup, there's a number of things that fell in my lap that season that helped us win the cup, and without them, we wouldn't have won. So kudos to Bill Zito. But I think the other thing is the maturation process of the team as a whole. Matthew Tkachuk knew a little bit more about what to do and what not to do as the playoffs went on, not put his team in a hole. I think Barkov proved himself to be a remarkable captain and be able to go head-to-head with McDavid. Bobrovsky had a rebirth, as we all know, by watching him. I mean, he came back from and was playing like he did when he won the Vezina Trophy. And a number of their players, like Forsling, you take a guy who was picked off of waivers and ends up being a top 4 defenseman.
Right.
Mikko Makala looked like he was Victor Hedman in that series. So I think there was just a lot of maturing that went into that team. And you got to give Paul Maurice a lot of credit. The one thing that you guys would be real familiar with that I think you should think about is the difference between Tarasenko and how he played after the deadline for Florida and how he played after the deadline for the Rangers. And it seemed to me that Paul Maurice pushed all the right buttons on Tarasenko, started him off in the playoffs. He could hardly notice he was on the team. And by the time the final came around, he was on their power play, he was on a higher line, and he was really impactful during the final against the Oilers.
Hey, Neil, thanks for joining us here. You talked about Matthew Tkachuk. Just what do you remember from that trade initially? What were your initial thoughts about that deal? Because obviously it was a blockbuster. Huberdeau, Florida Panther for life, thought that's what it would be, and then he goes to Calgary. Just what did you overall make of that trade when it happened?
Well, at the moment that it happened, I got to be honest with you guys. I didn't know Matthew Tkachuk the way I know him today. I don't know if anybody did, other than Keith. But, and I thought, well, boy, that's a huge trade. Huberdeau. I mean, Huberdeau is a core player for them, a guy that, as you said, was supposed to be there for life and was really symbolic of the Panthers. And I thought, geez, this is a big deal between Florida and Calgary, and I'll have to wait and see. I didn't think that it would be so dramatically one-sided as it is. It's just horribly one-sided, and it's one of those few trades in the league where it was there really wasn't cap issues mixed into it. It was just one player for another. Florida was willing to pay what Matthew wanted, and Huberdeau already came with the contract. So it was really, apples to apples on this trade.
So Islander fans got to see Kyle Oposo hoist the Stanley Cup. Proud moment for the fan base. You drafted Kyle Oposo 7th overall in 2006. What do you remember about talking to him before the draft and just about him as a player, a young player, and why you thought this was the right guy to make the pick there?
Well, I got to say the scouts had him up high, but not where the Islanders were picking that year. And when a lot of the reports came in, and I read them, and I read a lot of the things about his character and his work ethic and the psychological profile and so on. It was up there with Jordan Staal and people that were really high up in the draft. If you remember, Jordan Staal was extremely high up that year. And so I just felt that he was the right guy and was the power forward type player that could really do well in the NHL. And I'm so proud of Kyle Okposo because had I not been there, they were going to pick a defenseman that year that it ended up being the player that the Rangers took in the first round, and his name escapes me right now. But they took Okposo. He played one more year college. He went in and has had just a marvelous career. And I got to tell you, like him and Manny Malhotra that I took for the Rangers, I'm really proud of those two guys. Those were guys that were both taken around the same place and had extremely long careers and extremely useful players, and also adapted to the different parts of their career. They went, from a Okposo with the Islanders in his, let's say in his third or fourth year was a star. And then he had to adjust as his career went on to the role that the teams wanted him to play, till the Florida Panther team had him playing as a utility player, really as a guy that got put out there to give the Stars a rest. And he played, I thought, spectacular. So I'm very proud of Kyle. I haven't gotten to talk to him. I'd love to send him congratulations because I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it was great to see him finally get to hoist the cup, and what a story, right? In basically the last games of his career, right? So let's pivot to the offseason now. I saw an interesting nugget from your show, actually. You were talking about free agent tampering and how you look at all these contracts, right, that as soon as, actually even before noon came on July 1st, right, you're seeing these announcements or these rumors about players that are already essentially going to one team or another. And you mentioned that in your show. I just wanted to see if you could expand on that a little bit and just talk about how that's been going on and why there isn't more being made of it and why teams aren't being held accountable with this.
Well, I think from talking to GMs and league personnel, both before the draft and at the draft, and how things have changed from my time, they were saying that the tampering runs wild because there are so many free agents now, and sort of I'm saying there are so many, and now I'm going to say, but there are only so many good ones. So it's a different league now with so much free agency, and the teams, as they either miss the playoffs or get knocked out of the playoffs, they start right away working on next season. The Oilers and the Panthers, they got put into a heck of a position. They played their last game on June 24th.
Right.
And all of a sudden, 7 days later, you got free agency day, and they've been concentrating on their teams right up to the end. And that's where it came to the surface to me, where they said, someone was saying to me, those two teams are way behind the rest of the league because everybody's out talking to the free agents and trying to line up who they're going to sign. You might say, well, how can they possibly do that? There are rules that you can't negotiate, you can't talk to them. Right. But there's so many ways around that, as long as nobody, reports it and says to the league, here's proof. And you might ask, well, if one team was going to lose a player, name a name, say Tanev to Dallas was going to lose Tanev to Toronto, why don't they blow the whistle on it? Well, probably because Dallas is also lining up who they want to sign. So they don't want to get the whistle blown on them. So I think if you talk about blowing the whistle on people, there'd be so many whistles being blown once it started, and everybody'd be in huge trouble. So I just think I think it's hard to prove. You've got to say the agents aren't going to admit that somebody from the team talked to them early. And you can also make it that it isn't really somebody from your team that talks to them. You might have somebody that, you say, can you make a call for me and find out something? So I just know that it's changed, and it from what I was told, and again, this isn't solid fact, but I would bet on it. There's a lot of that going on, and it doesn't make sense that on July 1st at noon, like all these guys get signed right away. Like, really, did Nashville start negotiating with Stamkos at noon on July 1st?
Right.
and then have him signed to a big deal by whatever time it was. I mean, I find it hard to believe. The same with a number of players.
And Neil, the draft, you were at the draft, the Sphere, definitely get your thoughts on that. But there's a lot of talk that the draft's going to decentralize. How much, when you were a GM, how many trades actually come to fruition on the draft floor? How much is it really more or less not happening there? Because it seems like obviously on TV, they're showing the GMs talking to each other. How much of it is just pleasantries, asking about the family, or is it really trade talks going on?
Well, it's funny that I'm on this show and talking about that, because the last draft that I ran was that one in '06 for the Islanders. And if you remember, and you can look this up, I think I made about 3 trades on the draft floor to trade a pick to another team who gave me 2 picks back. And I think we ended up with something like 13 picks or something that year. And I think 4 players out of that draft had some time in the NHL. So I made trades on the floor because scouts may say to their GM, geez, Smith's available or Jones is available or something. And, we better get him now. I wonder if if Neil Smith's team would trade us his pick right now, and we could give him another pick this round and then a pick in the next round. So that goes on a lot. And of course, when it's decentralized next year, you won't be able to do that stuff face to face.
So, Neil, you talk about running that draft for the Islanders, so why don't we just stay there for now, if you would indulge us. Obviously, a very interesting time in Islander history where you get hired in 2006 as a general manager. You bring in Ted Nolan. You're there for 40 days, a very stark number that sticks out whenever somebody might talk about your tenure with the Islanders. If you could, maybe just talk about what that experience is like, how that went, the 40 days, and if you wouldn't mind expanding on maybe just how things went at the end and why you ended up having such a short tenure.
Well, what really happened, and the mistake that I made personally, and it's all on me, is I didn't do research on the owner before I took that job. I was working for Versus. It was called, I think it was OLN back then. It was called that, but I was doing the Carolina Edmonton series, and I was in Carolina when I was talking to him, and I didn't ask a lot of questions about him. I was so enthusiastic to get to the Islanders, and you got to remember, first of all, I have a sort of a kid's worship of the NHL. Like, I've loved the NHL since I was just a little kid. My mom got me started on it in the original 6, and to me the NHL is everything. So when I got the job part-time, unpaid in 1980 with the Islanders, I was thrilled to death, and then I was able to start, luckily, and do an NHL career in management. And to think that I could go and be where Bill Torrey used to sit, and perhaps reignite the Islanders, which was really my team. I mean, I was with them a long time. When I say a long time, it was only a couple of years, but I was around them a lot. And the thrill of when you're first in a position like that, when you're only 25 years old and you're in with Dennis Potvin and all the greats, and they win the cup, and you're in with the Stanley Cup. Then the year before, I was playing minor league hockey, and now all of a sudden I'm in this situation with the great Al Arbour and the great Bill Torrey. And so to think that I could go back and run the Islanders and be in Bill Torrey's office, and that was a fantasy to me. And so I took the job at a not at a very good salary either, at a below what I probably should have been getting, but I wanted the job so bad. And I, once we were finished with the TV, we had the press conference and we started, and I knew I was in trouble the first day, because suddenly we were going to have a meeting in the hotel, the Marriott, across from the Nassau Coliseum. And there was about 7 or 8 people in there. And we were going to talk about various things. And then the next day we had another one. We were going to talk about various things. And the GM wasn't going to be a typical GM. It was going to be almost a committee type of decision making. And I'd come from being the head cook and bottle washer for the Rangers for 11 years and had a lot of an autonomy with the Rangers. I was lucky. I was in a time that the Garden allowed me to do what I had to do. And so to go to the Islanders now and be not able to use the skill set that I thought that I had was very depressing. It was really a downer, and it wouldn't work. And I knew it wouldn't work. And I probably told too many people that this is never going to work. And some people overheard me saying that and told Charles about that. And I was so down about the whole experience. I didn't sign my contract. I wouldn't sign it. It was on my desk and I didn't sign it. Well, and the problem that eventually came from that was that when it went to arbitration in front of the commissioner, I had signed the employee handbook, and I hadn't signed the contract. Of course, when the administrative assistant hands you the employee handbook, you just sign it because you know you're going to agree with anything you got to do as an employee. The contract was something else. I just hated it. Hated being there. The only time I got to be alone or left alone was at free agent day when Ken Morrow was there with me. And I think we did a good job that day. And it ended up that team made the playoffs that year. I know at the last second, but they still made the playoffs. And poor departed Chris Simon was one of those players. And then, you know, even at the draft, I knew I was in big trouble because I wanted to go up and announce, as all GMs do, right? Go up and announce the first pick, Kyle Oposo. And the owner said, no, we'll have Teddy do it. And I said, that's not what goes on. Well, that's why I want to do it that way, because I don't want to do it the way everybody else does it. And I'm like, holy crap, what have I got myself into here now? You know, so it was just it just was a bad situation. Unfortunately, I wish it hadn't been like that. But there's no way that I could have done it the way he wanted to do it. There's not a chance that I could have done that. I would have been depressed and not able to get out of bed in the morning. It was just because you know when somebody doesn't allow you to do your job. It's very depressing, especially when you're very experienced. It's like Ken Holland in Edmonton. I mean, 4 Stanley Cups, almost a 5th one. And I mean, there's a reason why he walked away from the Edmonton Oilers after going to Game 7 in the final.
Right. And Neil, I remember that summer, and I remember the excitement around Islander country, you coming in and Ted Nolan, and kind of like a fresh restart for the franchise. And there was a lot of excitement, and what a whirlwind it was with obviously the way that it ended up. But I'll tell you what, in 40 days, you got busy. You got a lot of work done. You talked about free agent day, and just to rattle off Brendan Witt, Tom Poti, Mike Sillinger, Chris Simon, as you mentioned, you brought all those guys in a very short span of time who were a huge part of that team being a playoff team. How did you get that all to come together and convince these guys to come to the island? Because I think, up until more recent years, it was kind of an unspoken thing where the Islanders had a tough time bringing guys over here, and you were able to do it so successfully in such a short span of time.
Well, and that's right. And I can tell you, because it doesn't matter now, there's nothing anybody could do to me, but not one of those guys got talked to before July 1st. I can guarantee you
Nice.
that. Because it just didn't happen back then. But I think what happened was there was some optimism on the agents and the players' part that I was there, and it was still fresh in everybody's mind that I had been successful with the Rangers and that I was somebody that had put good teams together, and that the Islanders now were going in a different direction than they had been going because they hired this guy. And if they hired this guy, they must want to go his direction. Well, unfortunately, he didn't want to go my direction, but they still had those players that I signed that day, and they had Ted Nolan who did a good job. So, it was really unfortunate. It was an unfortunate time. It's not a time that I regret. I'm actually proud of the time that I was there, and I'm glad that I was there. I'm a little bit shy about a lot of people introduce me as the only man to be GM of both New York teams. And while that's true, I never, there was no games under me during my tenure as GM. So
Right.
I can just say that the things that I can say that I'm very proud of is the fact that they made the playoffs that year, and that I was insistent on Kyle Oposo as the first pick. And then, guys, you'll remember the defenseman that we picked too that had played for Ted Nolan. He ended up with a pretty long career in the NHL. Andrew
McDonald?
Andrew McDonald. Yeah. Yeah, right. He had played for Teddy, and to be honest with you, it was Ted that said it to me. I can't believe these other guys from the Quebec League are being drafted, and Andrew McDonald's not being drafted. So we ended up taking him, and he did have a long career. I think he ended up in Philly at the end, but it was a pretty good short run.
Well, Neil, thanks for sharing all that with us. That was excellent. And before we let you go, maybe you can just quickly touch on the current offseason here, maybe just looking at some of the teams that we're moving and shaking. You look at what Barry Trotz has done in Nashville, maybe who are winners so far of the offseason, maybe some losers, and maybe if you want, you could touch on the Islanders picking up Anthony Duclair.
Yeah, I think that, the Nashville Predators have done amazing. I'm not going to go as far as to say I think that they did everything right, because they might be the oldest team in the league now. They've gone way old with these players they've taken. Not bad players, good players, but they're old. They're not young. If you look at their average age, I think they're going to be a definite playoff team. And maybe if that's what they wanted, and the owners wanted that, they wanted definitely to be in the playoffs, I think they're going to be there. They've got a real good coach too, and Andrew Burnett. So I'm sure they're going to be real good. They were a definite winner. I am worried for Tampa Bay. I mean, I'm not with Tampa Bay, but I'm worried for them in that they lost their captain and basically the staple of their franchise, the guy that's been there for so long and is emblematic and still a great player. I thought this past season did some good things for them. So I'm worried about them. My money is on Victor Hedman to be the captain next year. I think that one's, plus he's the other guy in the ad that you always have to watch on TV.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, about the getting money for college.
That's a great one.
I think that Chicago did some interesting things. Anthony Duclair has had a suitcase career for sure. I mean, he's been how many teams now? About 7 or 8, I believe. It'll be interesting to see. I know the Islanders signed him to a 4-year deal. It'll be interesting to see where he fits, how he fits. He's definitely a good player. He's played really well for the Panthers last season when they went to the final, for Tampa this year. He's a good NHL player. I don't understand why he doesn't get to stay longer in any one place. And that may be something that will come out because, and I'm not saying anything by that anyway. Believe me, I'm not saying anything. I don't know Anthony Duclair, but I'm curious as to why he has such short stints in different places. So we'll see. And maybe Patrick Waugh knows him somehow. That could be the case because it's pretty incestuous business where, as I said, Ted Nolan coached that defenseman, right, and then all of a sudden, you end up taking him because Teddy knew him so well. Maybe Patrick Waugh really wanted Anthony Duclair. That could possibly be the case, but it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to the first game against Utah for the Islanders. That's their home opener, and that should be fun. The other thing that I question is Varlamov or Sorokin, who's number one? I think I know who I think is number one. That doesn't mean he is number one. That would be Sorokin. I think he's one of the best goalies in the league, but it seemed to me that Patrick Waugh had Varlamov, using him quite a bit and almost supplanting Sorokin as a number one guy.
Yeah, I bet we've talked about it before. If it's not Sorokin, there's a big issue. Neil, last one for me here. Obviously, your job is to build the best team possible, but how tough is it to separate the emotional side with getting to know a player, like what's going on with the Rangers right now with Jacob Trouba, but also trying to do right by the team. How tough is that line to really, you don't want to be too much emotionally invested in a player, but also at the same time, it is a business.
It is. And, if you want to reflect back to my time, just to give an example, I mean, when Mark Messier, we were negotiating with him when his contract was up in 97. Our owners at the time didn't want to pay him more than they paid Gretzky. And they just were insistent with me, no, this is all you can offer him. So that's all I offered. The negotiations went back and forth for a while. And then Vancouver threw so much money at him, he couldn't possibly not go because the Rangers just weren't offering that. One thing that people don't understand is it's sometimes not the general manager, because he doesn't have control of the purse strings. It's really the owner's money. So if you go to the Jacob Trouba thing, the thing that I'm surprised at in that situation is to allow this to happen and to allow it to happen publicly. Because, did Trouba have the greatest season? No. Played with a broken ankle, which is courageous, still puts the fear into the opponents every night.
Sure.
But this is your team leader. This is your captain. From what I understand, that if the players had to vote to who should be the captain, they would still vote Trouba every time. So now you go to him and it leaks out that you've talked to Detroit because he's a Michigan guy. And so you've talked to Detroit. Now you ask him for his 15-team no-trade list. They say, well, screw you. We're not giving it to you until June 1st or July 1st or whatever, the exact date that is in the contract. And what do? They put down as one of the 15 no-trade teams, Detroit, because it's already gotten out there. Now you've got some muddy waters with maybe the most important guy on your team, the captain, the guy that has the most influence in the locker room. So it's going to be something that they're going to have to handle they're going to have to handle it. And it's a bit of a mess, I think, at least from the outside. They got to get Trouba back if he's mentally in trouble because of the fact that he feels not wanted. They're going to have to make him feel wanted again. It's a real tough situation.
Well, Neil, tremendous stuff. Really appreciate your time tonight. Really enjoyed the interview. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Good luck with it.
Thanks so much. Take
Thanks,
care.
Neil.
All right, folks, that was Neil Smith, former general manager of the Islanders, former general manager of the New York Rangers, Stanley Cup champion, and host of the NHL Wraparound podcast. Great stuff.
That was great. I mean, listen, everyone was asking, was he going to talk about the Islanders stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, he did.
Oh, he did.
He did indeed. So great stuff. So let's reel it back into the Islanders. Let's talk a little bit more about what's happening in their offseason. You mentioned earlier Ishakov. There's word about him going back to the KHL. Do we know that for certain, or is that maybe just more agent speak?
So I think there's a possibility he does. And I think the biggest issue is you look at, and we'll touch on this, the cap situation, the RFAs being handed their qualifying offer. Now, Ishakov's qualifying offer is at $813,750. Not a lot for a professional NHL that wants to be an NHL player. And I think the biggest issue with Ishakov, his agent Dan Milstein, and the Islanders is that he's done everything he can to prove himself at the AHL level. Back-to-back AHL All-Star. The problem is the Islanders don't have a spot for him. Talent-wise, he's a top 6 guy. But can he play a top 6 role at the NHL level? We don't know. He's played 2 games, and none of it was in a top 6 role.
Right.
But the issue is, he could probably make more money in the KHL. But if he goes to the KHL, the Islanders still own his rights till he's 27.
Right.
If he goes over there, does that, does Lou have an issue with him going there? And then is he going to come back and play for this team in 4 years? He's going over there hoping that the Islanders trade his rights. It could be agent talk to say, listen, give him a 2-year deal, whatever. Give him an opportunity to be a top 6 guy. They have a hole right now. Second line winger. The question is, does Lou want to go that route? I do think he'll end up going to the KHL. I don't think I don't think he's going to be given the, hey, which Lou would never do. You're guaranteed that spot. I don't think that's happening, and you have to earn it, of course.
Right.
And I want to see Ishakov succeed. You want to see a guy that's homegrown, one of those guys that really was here, drafted, things like that. He's here.
Yeah.
I just don't see an opportunity where he's going to get the chance to flourish the same way Wahlstrom should go somewhere else because, and we'll touch on him in a second, he's just not going to get the opportunity to be that top 6 guy here. I think if Ishakov had played 15 or so games last year and the Islanders really got a good look at, he fits really well alongside Brock Nelson. The problem is he's such a wild card that it would be tough. And we talked about the finances.
Yes.
They have 1 spot left.
Exactly.
And 1 spot left in theory, cap friendly, which is going away soon. Puck Peter, whatever you're going to look at. It's not official. There's probably, I'm saying they have to clear and make one more room to fit Holmstrom. Maybe they don't, and the books just are off a little bit, but they don't really have a spot for Ishikov financially or roster-wise. So we'll find out soon about Ishikov. The qualifying offer went out. We'll see if he accepts it. I doubt it. And he's also arbitration eligible, but he did not file for arbitration. So we'll see on that. But, what are your thoughts on the Ishikov thing?
Well, like you were saying, it's a lot of question marks for him if he sticks around, right? Like, he's really got to bet on himself, and it's really got to work out, because if it doesn't, he's got a lot of guys that can take the spots that he'd be looking for, right? You talk about Holmstrom, you talk about even Siplikov coming over here, right? He's going to get every opportunity to make this team, right? So, the KHL for him is just more of a guarantee, right? He'll probably get paid some more money. He'll probably get the role that he wants. He'll get to play over there, no problem, but he could end up at best maybe just being an extra forward for the Islanders, and that may not be, satisfactory to him. So I could certainly see him going over the KHL, especially with the logjam of players that they have, before they re-sign Holmstrom and whatever ends up happening with Oliver Wahlstrom, who I want to pivot to next. So I don't think we're going to see Ishakov in an Islander uniform next year. We'll see, but I don't think it's going to happen.
And I think this is the biggest issue. You look at Wahlstrom, look at the other guys in the minors, is that the Islanders being such a veteran, long-term contract team, young players don't get an opportunity unless there's injuries. And then a guy like Ish, again, I don't blame him. 2 years as an NHL All-Star. I'm not saying he's an NHL player. We talked about his size a lot.
Right, but he's ready for his next opportunity.
It's either he gets an NHL, there's nothing more for him to prove in the AHL.
Yeah.
So I think for that case, maybe he goes to the KHL, hopes that his rights gets traded, or builds up his game where teams are calling the Islanders saying he's letting it up in the KHL. Let's have him. Right. But you want to segue to Wahlstrom, and I want to talk about Wahlstrom as well, because Oliver Wahlstrom is a player that we spoke with Lou at the draft, and we asked him about Wahlstrom, and he said, "Listen, if we can get him an opportunity elsewhere, we're gonna do that, but we're not gonna give him away for free." We know that Wahlstrom got 9 games under Wah, proved really nothing. Wasn't the right fit. Didn't work out in Wah's system. It wasn't a shock. He hadn't worked out in pretty any system that he's been here with. But then you get to him being an RFA. He does get a qualifying offer. Lou said that was going to happen. His qualifying offer is, I wrote it down somewhere. Yeah, it's about 917,000 and change. But he files for arbitration. Everyone said, how on earth is Wahlstrom filing for arbitration? Right. For people that don't know, you go in front of an arbitrator. The player tells the arbitrator, based on stats, based on whatever it is, my player deserves more. And the team says, you don't deserve more because of X, Y, and Z. And a lot of times it gets ugly. Yeah. Teams get traded. Sometimes they doesn't even get to the arbitration, but it's a situation where the team has to tell the arbitrator that this player doesn't deserve what he's asking for, and the player's trying to back it up. Right. And Wahlstrom had the ACL injury. You did pretty much nothing production-wise this past year. Has no real leg to stand on to say I deserve more money. Right. So I think this is a move. Remember, this was not a team-elected arbitration. This is a player-elected arbitration. Could he get some more money? Sure, but I think this is a way for Wahlstrom's camp to speed up the clock on getting him traded. I think it doesn't benefit anyone for him to stay longer. Let Wahlstrom, wherever he's going to go, get acclimated to the situation, get acclimated to the new team. And I think there's no way financially that Wahlstrom's back. He has a role, and he's not going to be a top 6 guy here. So I think what's best is that both teams, shake hands, move on. But I think this is a way for, Wahlstrom's camp to say, Lou, we know you're going to work on getting me an opportunity. Work faster. Arbitration dates, July 20th to August 4th, I believe, is when they'll take. It's possible it doesn't happen. But at the same time, this is why his agent's doing it. Again, if he gets more money, it's just a pain for everyone involved. Just get him a new home. He's not going to play here. The cap space isn't there. And I think Wahlstrom on their team could maybe prove to be 20-something goal scorer, but it's just not. Whether he becomes a star in this league or not, it was not going to happen here. And if you have to get rid of him for nothing at this point, a mid to late round draft pick is nothing. Maybe you include him in a deal like we saw when Anthony Bavilla got thrown into that Horvat deal. I'm not saying that the Islanders are a blockbuster ready to go, but you don't want to lose him for nothing. But at the same time, as it goes on and drags on, and then you're paying him a little more, you're probably going to lose for nothing anyway. I think it's just get it done now.
Right, and the fact that they barely have the roster space for him to begin with, trying to fit his salary in there, it just doesn't. It's another guy who it just doesn't look like he's going to be an Islander. I mean, we talked about this during the season, how it looks like this was Wahlstrom's swan song as an Islander, right? That it was if it wasn't going to work out with Wah, that's pretty much it.
And he got the chance. Julien Gauthier, who probably did not deserve to go down to the minors, goes down to the minors to give Wahlstrom a shot. The other thing I want to add to is if this does go to arbitration, and I kind of would be shocked if it got to that. If it goes to arbitration, the case settles. The Islanders get a second buyout window. Opens up where they could buy out a contract of $5 million or more. That's Pajot, Lee. We've pretty much talked about that every episode that we've had here. I don't think the Islanders would use it, but it's a nice safety blanket. Let's say they acquire Ehlers and they don't move Pajot. Hypothetical. You have to clear cap space. They could go that route. They get that second buy window. But like I said, I'd be really shocked if this case gets to arbitration.
Yeah, we shall see. Time will tell. And after the fact, they get that second buyout window, right?
Yeah, if it settles. It has to settle.
It has to be settled.
If he filed and he gets traded, it doesn't happen.
Do you think the Islanders would use that buyout window?
I would be shocked if Lou bought anyone out. But again, if it's a cap situation where you acquire a player, you're over the cap by, let's say it's even $5 million, and you don't want to have to buy Opezzo. Like, you really don't want to do that, but you can't find a trade partner. The team knows you're up against the cap. You have to be cap compliant by day one. Sure, I think it's just a nice safety blanket. God forbid we make a trade and get a blockbuster guy that's making $8-9 million a year and we couldn't clear the necessary cap space.
Right.
They have it, but I would be absolutely stunned. Again, I would be absolutely stunned if they even get it, because I don't think Wallstrom's going to arbitration. The case is going to happen.
All right, well, why don't we take one more break and we'll keep the train rolling here. Before we do, I want to tell you all about Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for open play. Food and drink, beer and wine, fun, and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game, from old favorites to the hottest new releases. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, Lorcana, and organized play communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe, find your crowd, unplug your game. We're going to go to break. We'll be right back.
Islanders fans, Sunday night is hockey night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at Hockey Night NY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York, the best night of the week for any Islanders fan.
And now, it's time for What's on Tap, a look ahead at the Islanders' upcoming schedule.
It's funny, Stefan, because the Islanders don't have an upcoming schedule.
No,
they don't.
It's a day-by-day thing right now.
They don't. The only thing on tap is potentially more moves. Do you think they might happen?
Yeah, we talked about the cap situation. I guarantee a bunch of people are going to ask that. I have no idea what could be in the Lamoriello playbook. It could still be being written. Obviously, it's Waz's playbook also with the player. But yeah, I mean, we have arbitration hearings. We have qualifying offers need to be signed by. There's a lot of stuff happening, but with the Islanders, you never know.
I guess the question is, let's say they don't add any more players, right? Let's say, whether they're trying for Ehlers or not, it doesn't work out. They don't bring anybody else in. We're still talking about fitting 23 guys on this roster, right, under the salary cap. So what do they do to make that happen? Who goes or what changes?
I mean, right now, they're not going to field 23.
Right.
Financially, maybe you try to move somebody in a trade, one of your depth forwards, maybe Hudson Fasching is a callous. I think it sucks with what happened this past year. We talked about Fasching being that lightning in a bottle. His first year, he gets that 2-year extension. Really proud moment. Just as someone that got to watch him work his tail off and journeyman in the AHL, got it, and then he starts last year's camp with an injury. And I do think that affected him getting into a rhythm. Guys like that are spark plugs. They need to play. And he just didn't have a great year. And when you talk about whether it's Holmstrom being an extra in this lineup if they add another player, or they want to give maybe Maggio an opportunity, or young players like that, Fasching's not going to be a top 6 NHL caliber player in his career. That's not what he is.
Right.
Julien Gauthier is under contract as well. He's not, again, I'm not counting him against it, but so maybe you move Fasching. It's not a lot of money, but it would get you financially allowing to bring on more than just Holmstrom. You could keep probably at 23. Maybe another move has to happen, waivers, things like that. But Lou's going to have a tough decision to make, and why it'll come through training camp, just which of your extra players are going to still be there, and which ones you're going to have to cut ties with, because you can make an argument that all of them should be there, or you can make the argument that...
Or does somebody end up on the IR?
Could do that as well. I mean, also, in theory, they have $900,000 in cap space.
Right.
Could they try to, league minimum...
Bump that up a little bit.
But league minimum-wise, try to squeeze in a Martin or a Clutterbuck. Like, there's... we don't know what Lou's priorities are right now. As long as Martin and Clutterbuck haven't signed anywhere else, you got to think in your back of your mind that they're not signing anyone else and they haven't announced their retirement.
Right.
So Lou is very smart. When we talked about, someone's got to go on waivers. You have Ross. there were so many ways for him to get around getting rid of players until he had to.
He'll figure it out.
So he'll figure it out.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to be a tough decision because a lot of these depth guys have played big roles.
Right.
You know, Hudson Fashion, they make the playoffs, Hudson Fashion. You look at Kyle McLean this past year, a depth forward who was their, down the stretch, spark plug, filled the Tzidikis role, filled other roles, was their best player in the playoffs. So you never know who's going to come in and be that guy. Could it happen in training camp where you're watching in training camp going, who's Siplikov? Perfect example.
Right.
And if he proves to not be an NHL player and he's your extra, now what? So there's a lot that Lou has to figure out now, but it's gonna be tough decisions to get this roster to be cap compliant and carry 23 people. I would be shocked if Lou didn't give himself the financial gap, if you will, where he's that much against the cap come to the start of the year where he can't do anything.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We still have the rest of July. We got August. And then just before training camp in September. So we'll see what Lou decides to do. And then other than that, it's just golf and vacation, man.
Yeah, I'm not a big golf guy.
What's up with that?
Mini golf, I'm good at. It's
okay.
It's the swing. It's very awkward. I feel like as long as I can still run and play tennis, I love playing tennis. Until I can't do that, then I'll play golf.
Okay, fair enough.
The card.
You got plenty of time ahead of you.
Nothing about golf players being lazy, but you do have a card.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. All right. Maybe one day.
Thank you, Jay.
We'll
Jay said, you know what? Yeah.
All right. So that'll do it for What's on Tap. Let's move on to the hero of the week. Nice job, Jay. When you hear this song, that means it's time for the Hero of the Week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Half price hero, which this week is The Godfather, featuring Cappy ham, Genoa salami, pepperoni, provolone, lettuce and tomato, oil and vinegar on a hero. Stop on in to the Blue Line Deli and Bagels Huntington location. Mention Hockey Night in New York for half off The Godfather. And with that, my hero, Stefen, is Anthony Duclair for deciding to take a pen and sign his signature on a contract with the New York Islanders. I'm excited about him coming to the Island. I think he's going to be a good fit with this squad. He was one of the guys that we talked about before the season even ended, that maybe he's a guy that could get at the trade deadline. Yep. So kind of had our sights on him a little bit. He ends up coming to the Island as a free agent. Excited to see him, his speed, his scoring prowess, and see how he works out in the Island. And maybe, just maybe, he can help out that power play too.
Yeah, the Islander fans are hoping so, and so are the Islanders, that 4-year commitment. But, my hero is Patrick Waugh, because he brings Duclair over. Clearly, you heard Duclair say it.
Right.
It's just, that's such a big thing that I think people miss with the Waugh hiring is a lot of these guys, you talk about Cal Clutterbuck growing up, he idolized this guy. This is a guy where, wow, you get to play for Patrick Waugh. Now, maybe the younger players missed out on him.
Sure.
But the name, it's like playing for Brodeur. Playing for guys like that where I got to grow up watching him.
Hockey royalty.
Now I'm playing for him. So you have no idea how much of it. Again, Duclair played for him, so that's different because he knew what it was like, and clearly he wanted him. But who knows on the, these players that are still available in free agency, the lower level guys, not the star guys. Wow, I'd kill it to have 1 year under Patrick Waugh. And they signed for cheap. Yeah. So I think Patrick Waugh, he said he was going to have a hand in the decision making. Lou said that, which was a shock to all of us because that doesn't usually happen. And the move the Islanders do make, Duclair, I guarantee that bringing Mike Riley back, Waugh played a huge part in that as well.
And one move I almost forgot to bring up. Doug Hood on his way out.
Yes.
Tommy Albaline comes in as an assistant coach. And it's kind of funny because you think he's going to be a Patrick Waugh guy, and clearly this is a connection with Lou Lamoriello. So I'm curious how this decision came to be, how much Waugh obviously had some kind of hand in the decision because he's going to be working under Waugh, right? But it is kind of funny that it's another Jersey/Toronto guy coming from Lou's neck of the woods to join this team now after John McClain as well.
Lou probably said, listen, the Benoit news broke way too early. I still hired him for you, so I'm going to have my guy. But I think clearly they're doing a great job communicating with one another together. It's not a situation where Lou's telling, I don't think Waugh would have taken the job. Again, he doesn't want to be in management. He made that abundantly clear. But Waugh wants to coach and use his experience to his advantage, and he knew the right guy to bring in Benoit, whatever you want. It's just hard to pronounce his last name, guys. I apologize. Call him Benny. To bring him in to be that defensive guy, and I think Lou also saw value in having another voice. Now, Huda didn't work out here. He got an opportunity to go to the Sharks.
Right.
Followed in Doug Waite's footsteps. To go there, and Lou made it clear that Huda had another job. Like it wasn't that Lou was kicking him to the curb, and there's a great relationship there as well. It just didn't work out here with the game plan. I think Lou knew what he was looking for. He wanted to bring in a winner, things like that. So I think it's a situation where Lou and Waugh talked. Waugh said, "I have my defensive guy," but sure, and I'm assuming they all spoke to him at the same time.
Sure,
Lou didn't go behind his back. That's not how. It's a different time, I think, on the island in terms of how Lou's running things. Clear by Waugh going in and getting Duclair. Who knows if Lou was really high in Duclair? And Waugh probably said, listen, I played with him. I mean, I had him as a player in juniors. Watched career, he brings that speed. Waz's system is all about speed in transition and breaking the puck out. And Duclair fits that. We talked about it at the deadline. Wrote about it way too many times. It just made too much sense. And so I think Lou letting Waz make that call, make that move, it seemed like he really spearheaded that. Clear that he did. So Waz is my hero because his name definitely has an impact on this team now and going forward.
All right, so that'll do it for your heroes of the week, Anthony Duclair and Patrick Waugh. And now, why don't we take it to the Snake Den?
Welcome to the Snake Den with Jake the Snake Redonis.
Welcome to the Snake Den, Jake. How we doing, pal? How was your 4th of July?
So that's pretty cool.
No.
He's even got a light for me. I think he feels.
You know
a little
who's
bad.
dumb this time? You forgot to unmute your mic, so now you can give it back to him.
Loser.
Oh yeah, who's dumb now, there, Jay?
Fighting words. Fighting words.
My 4th was good. I went to the beach, saw some live music. Can't complain over here about that.
All right, man. So you got a take for us?
I do.
What do you got?
So I like the trajectory this team is taking.
Okay.
And I like this offseason so far. I mean, Anthony Duclair, how many times we talked about him last season?
Right.
It was just written in the stars. It had to happen. You finally have a guy who could keep up with Matt Barzal. That's pretty cool. We haven't really seen that
cool.
too much. Yeah, and if they could bring in another winger, which you guys have been talking about, would be awesome. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers would be perfect. He's one of the scariest players coming down the slot with the puck on his stick. So, but yeah, I like the way things are going for this team. I think it's going to be a better year for them.
Okay.
Too. I mean, you have Scott Mayfield, who I think he bared a lot of the brunt that maybe wasn't his own fault. I mean, he was hurt in game 1 last year.
Right.
So
it's funny. Picture yourself as one of those fans, right? Giving it to him, or even Trouba, right? You find out about his ankle and stuff like that, and you're giving him a hard time. Then you find out, oh yeah, he was playing on a broken back the entire year. Right?
And he was working his tail off too.
Right.
I mean, obviously not a great year for Scott, but to have him healthy, even if he's not playing top pair minutes, that's already going to benefit the team.
Sure.
Riley's going to take a lot of pressure off that ankle, but off him in general.
Yes.
I mean, we talked about it so much. It's 41 games on a broken ankle. Everyone was complaining that, it's just the same Scott Mayfield. They shouldn't have signed him anyway. He sucks, blah, blah. But you just watched. He looked like he was unable to move. And he was. He talked to me about it, how much it hurt all the time.
I think I said this when that news came out, is that obviously you don't like to hear news that a player's hurt, but it was almost good to hear that he was hurt so that there was actually an explanation for why his play was where it was, right? And look, Scott Mayfield's not a perfect player. He's where he belongs. He's a bottom pairing defenseman. He's not without his warts, but he's still he's a big guy. He's physical. He can clear the crease. Penalty kill for sure.
And they missed, again, this was I say again all the time.
You're like Alexei Yashin.
Yeah, I hear my dad's voice the whole time telling me to stop doing that. With Mayfield being out, the penalty kill struggled so much.
Yeah.
And we're not even thinking about how much Mayfield he said that, of course, he's going to block the shots.
Right.
But there's a little bit of nerves trying to block it. When we talked to him about that, we thought the ankle had healed, that he was already playing on an ankle that was limited.
Right.
And now your brain's telling you I have to go block this shot. Just muscle memory, but also another shot and you're done. So I think we don't really talk, when we talk about how much the penalty kill struggled, is that Mayfield, look at that Ranger game. Outside, the penalty kill. Things like that where he takes the penalty.
Right.
How many of the penalties, again, he's taken penalties in his career where, he's a slower player, he's not fast, but how many of the penalties did he take over those 41 games where he just had to because he couldn't get
mobility,
there? And if he was on a healthy ankle, how many of his penalty minutes don't happen? It's a big thing.
So, Jake, you like the way things are going. You like the Duclair move.
I do. I like the Duclair move. I like the Siplikov. I hope I got that right.
You did.
Yeah, I'm actually very intrigued to see what happens with him too, because you never know with the guys out of the K. But
yeah, it could be a diamond in the rough.
Exactly. But I like the way this team's going. I think if they don't do anything else, I think that they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be in the playoffs again.
Okay.
If they do something else, who knows? Maybe they could make a little noise.
Okay, Stefen.
Islanders Country. Get your daily fix of Isles news, highlights, and analysis by subscribing to Isles Fix, the only Monday through Friday Islanders newsletter sent directly to your inbox. Sign up for free or become a paid subscriber for added benefits at islesfix.substack.com.
Well done. And now why don't we take it to Questions Brewing with our pal Jason Belsky. Jay, how you doing?
It's time for Questions Brewing. So go ahead, ask us a question.
So many buttons up here.
So many buttons. Yeah, look, what do you do when Ed's not here, right?
It's definitely rough without my
Your pal, your partner in crime,
my little desk partner.
Ed is once again away, but he's still part of the team. He just couldn't make it today. No, Ed, so we got to deal with you.
Well, it's all right. You guys still like me, I think.
You're okay.
I'm okay.
You're okay.
All right. Well, let's.
What do you got for us? How's the chat going?
The chat is on fire.
Love that. Okay.
And let's just ring in here. See what we got. Questions brewing. All right, let's go. Does Zeker go to wing on the fourth line?
Ooh, that's a good one. No, I don't think he does. I think last year McLean played the center and they moved Zegras to the wing because they felt like that was the best moving. Zegras didn't really play the wing on the fourth line. He played the wing on the top line. I think you look at the one. I remember one game I asked Wah about McLean early on. He goes, "Love his energy. He just needs to be a little stronger in the faceoff dots." Zegras is usually an over 50% guy. I think it just benefits the Islanders to have McLean jetting up the wing, and having Zegras, who has not struggled as a center in this league, to be that fourth line guy.
Agreed.
Sorry, and that question was from DTMR. I'm just...
Buddy, it's okay, man.
It's all right.
You're doing your best.
I am. A lot going on over here at the Hockey Night Control Panel. All right, Aisle 72 has questions brewing. How are the Isles going to address their bad, awful, terrible PK? I don't see it getting much better without some personnel changes.
Well, I guess Stefen kind of started that by talking about Scott Mayfield, getting him back healthy. Hopefully he looks a lot better on that PK, when they get back to business and he's got a healed ankle, right? That'll help. But there's no doubt that, they need to improve on what last year was just an absolute disaster, right? But you hope that with the change in personnel behind the bench, that helps a little bit there. Maybe they get to work at training camp to work on a different way of operating on the PK and improve it. I mean, it can't get any worse. So you got to figure it's going to be at the very least a bit better. But listen, you know what? I'm curious. I don't know if Duclair was known for playing special teams so much, but maybe you get his foot speed out there because. Look, you had staples there like Cal Clutterbuck, who may not even be back with the team, right? I mean, you look at guys like Pajot, who's been on there. I'd be curious to see who kind of fills those spots now. Maybe McLean gets some responsibility there. We'll probably see Cizikas back in the PK. I'm curious to see how they use that, but listen, like I said, it can't get any worse than it already is.
I think I really do think the key is getting Barzal on there. It's putting aside the injury scare that could always happen. Mm-hmm. But if you want Barzal to be a part of the elite players in this league that, do it all for the team, plays in the power play, he's got the speed. He also led the league, I'm pretty sure, in takeaways last year. Mm-hmm. That is huge on the PK. If you had him, I'm not saying him and Duclair would be a PK duo.
Right.
But the speed and the pressure, I mean, Michael Grabner did on Long Island for a couple of years. And everywhere he went.
Yeah, good call.
Forget the finishing. Because the PK, really, your goal is not to score short-ended goals. It's just to not allow power play goals.
Sure.
But getting on breakaways or dumping the puck, icing it down, and your player beating it out and hugging along the boards for 10 seconds, that is huge. So having speed, I think Barzal can do it. I really do. It's just up to Wah to trust. And, if he gets hurt, you're in trouble. But also Barzal can get hurt like we saw against the Bruins a couple years ago. A little hit against the boards could be it. So I think if you want to take the PK seriously and really make it dangerous and scary and not shelter up, having a guy like Barzal out there also tells the other team that they're putting their best player out there against us. So I think Barzal is key to rebranding this PK.
I like it.
Thank you.
From T. Boyle, we got, who is a good comparison for Yzerman?
Good comparison.
You were there.
Well, I think good comparison. We don't know. I mean, at the NHL level, it's a guy that could score goals. Someone I talked to, a scout there, said that he was a Cole Caulfield-esque kind of guy.
Okay.
The big person that they've been relating him to is Wahlstrom, just because of how dominant he was in juniors, playing for United States. But I heard the Caulfield thing. I think the biggest issue is, can he be more than just a one-dimensional guy? I've seen a lot of guys in the NHL that are just pure goal scorers. I hope, I think Islander fans would hope that it's not a Mike Hoffman situation where he's abysmal defensively. So I think the Caulfield was the one name. Wow, the Long Island accent really comes out with Caulfield. Wow. That's the one name I did hear, and he's a little bigger. Caulfield's really small, but Caulfield, if you guys haven't watched, he's an elite guy in Montreal. He scored a sick goal against the Islanders in that game where Pierre Engvall wants to forget. That game back in Montreal. He scored a goal where he deked everybody out. But I think for Yzerman, it's just building that two-way game, and I think the fact that Celebrini is not going back to college allows Yzerman to maybe be thrown more into a bigger role with Celebrini not there. Islanders. So I think for the Islanders, it's letting him under Jay Pandolfo. Learn the two-way game. When we talked about it last week, like Lou is so high on Pandolfo building a player, not just a one-dimensional guy, getting him to understand that I think it's going to be up to Yzerman. And I think that's the difference between Yzerman and Wahlstrom is that Wahlstrom never got that two-way game where he could play the two ways but also score and be willing to balance that. I think Yzerman's in really good hands where if he could find a way to even be, a quarter of a two-way player and still not sacrifice that offense, this has the guy the potential to be a top 6 elite goal scorer in this league, but it's really going to be up to him.
Well done. Jay.
We have State of Survival from YouTube asking, what do you think Lou will do for his next move? Move Wahlstrom? Make a trade or salary dump?
Well, we kind of touched on that too, and I think Wahlstrom, I mean, that's probably the safest bet is moving Wahlstrom out in some way, shape, or form. A, because he's not cracking this team. B, because it's another salary they can't jam under the cap, right? So it just kind of makes sense. What they get for him, who the hell knows? Does he go in a bigger package if they are, big game hunting with Ehlers out there and stuff like that? Maybe he gets attached to somebody like Pajot. Sure, that's possible. But I think the safest bet, if Lou is kind of done acquiring guys, and Wahlstrom's probably the next guy to go.
Good job.
All right, we got Mel Armenia.
Hey, Mel.
Thoughts on the schedule? How do we feel about the road trip to begin the season?
I think it's a good test. You're opening at home against Utah. This is going to be whether they're good or not. First, this is going to be Utah's second game, but they're going to open again. I think at home against Chicago. Then they come to the Islanders. It's a huge test. I'm not saying Utah fans are going to travel. There's a fan group there, but they got to acclimate themselves to the NHL. Sure, but it's going to be a good test. And then you go on the road, and I think that's never a bad thing early in the year. The distractions of being at home, go on the road, hopefully win some of those games, and come home to your fans cheering you on that you had a good, successful start on the road. The hardest, I think the road is hard for a lot of players, but I think earlier in the year to get those road trips out of the way is more important because then at the end of the year, you look at the schedule, you have more games at home. It's less, with your families more. So I think it's fun. And also, too, team bonding. Getting on the road and bonding. Again, Sipakov is a guy where I'm pretty sure he doesn't speak great English. And, getting him acclimated to the players on the team and going on the road and playing cards or whatever is getting to know him. The more they get to know each other away from the rink, the better that chemistry is going to be on the rink. And when you're home, you go to the rink, you do stuff, maybe you go out to dinner, but you go back home with your families. On the road, you're going to the gym together, you're waking up together, you're eating breakfast, you're on the plane for 8-9 hours, whatever total. So I think it's really important, especially if there are Duclair being a new player, at Sipakov, whoever else they add. Getting on the road early is so important to building that chemistry.
There you go.
We got golf ops.
Sorry. This question's for Stefen. No.
Exactly.
Why do you hate golf?
Yeah, Stefen, that's the first question. Second question is, I still believe in Sam Bolduc.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nice job, Jay.
Given his physical tools and size, does he maybe get a shot at the 3LD spot going forward, or maybe not until 24-25?
I think sure. Why not, right? I mean,
he has a roster spot right now.
See what the kid's got in camp, and he probably starts, as the 7th defenseman unless he forces his way onto the team. And that would be great for everybody, right? That means he's utilizing those, the talent that he has, the size that he has. And we've talked about it, how, he has the ability. The question is whether he can put that onto the ice, play with confidence, and and for some guys it takes a while. Some guys it never comes. You get guys that'll light up the AHL and then they just can't put it together in the NHL for one reason or another, right? And Bolduc could just be a guy who needs more time. They do say that defensemen take longer to develop, so I don't think he's a guy you give up on yet. And hopefully he does figure it out. Hopefully he's speaking to the right people over the summer to get his mindset right, whatever the case may be. But if he has a good camp, that's a good problem for the Islanders to have.
Yeah, I think he's going to be the 7th, like Sean said. He's entering the final year of his deal, which is another big thing. But he has the skill. He could be a very good puck transitioner, big body, win battles. I saw him body Austin Matthews in his first NHL game, make outlet passes, get shots on goal. It's there. But if the Islanders can't get the most out of him, I also think too is, you talk about trade assets. Out of all the players, Chicago we talked about, Wahlstrom, things like that, is a young defenseman who hasn't gotten a chance to really blossom. Mm-hmm. Could that be not a huge piece, could that be a big piece for a prospect and NHL-ready defenseman?
Sure.
In a trade? But I think, put up a fight at training camp, try to win that job, and if you don't win that job, keep the mindset that the biggest thing under Lane that I think bothered Lane when he went to Bolduc is that he wasn't ready. Mm-hmm. It's hard when you sit for a while and you don't play.
Right.
But I think the issue is when Bolduc did get the chance, it took him too long to get into the game, and by that time he was already getting his minutes cut, bench for the third period, and then he's out of the lineup. And it's the NHL. You have to be ready. You gotta be ready to take someone else's job at any second.
Indeed.
All right. We got a question from Luigi Main. Will there be a prospect game? Is Yzerman eligible without an ELC to get into some preseason games?
Yeah, so the Islanders, for people that don't know, a lot of teams are holding their development camps right now. The Islanders don't do that under Lou. They hold their development camp a week before training camp begins. Now, I've been trying to figure out if Yzerman's going to be at this week before training camp. Danny Nelson wasn't after he was drafted because of college, and he had to go there for his freshman year, get acclimated. So I would be shocked if Yzerman is there.
Okay.
Could he play in games? I believe he could. I don't know if they would put him into a pre. I think it'd be one of those where he comes to development camp, stays for like 1 or 2 days of training camp. And I don't think it's right yet. Again, this guy's never played pro before. Then George got into a game last year, hadn't played pro at all. But I just think for a guy like Yzerman, where high draft pick, has college, they'd probably rather not throw him in there. There's other guys that trying to fight for a spot on the team that could really use those minutes. Or players like George or Odelius who had one training camp under their belt, got some 1 or 2 preseason games there, and then get it this time. So I don't even think if Yzerman was there, he would get into any games.
There you go.
That would be it, sirs.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I guess if that's the case, then we can wrap this thing up. So, folks, want to thank you all for tuning in here to twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers. You can cue that music whenever you're ready, Jay. All right, want to thank you all for tuning in here to the show. And we want to thank our wonderful sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington and 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip. Check out the menu or order online at BlueLineDeli.com. Also want to thank Main Street Board Game Cafe, located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Find out how to unplug your game at MainSTBoardGameCafe.com. And also a big thanks to Razor and Kniff Attorneys at Law. Nobody likes going to court, but if you have to, call 516-742-7600 for a free consultation. I want to send a big thanks to Neil Smith for joining us on the program. He was excellent. And I want to thank everybody here in the studio here. Stefen, Jake, Jay, this is kind of our season wrap show. If the Isles do anything over the summer, we might fire the mics back up, but right now it looks like the news is going to get a little slow, so we'll try to enjoy our August and get ready for next season. See what we have up our sleeves. We'll figure all that out. But I want to thank all you guys for hanging out with us all year, live in the chats, giving us some great questions and having some fun with us. We got more in store coming for you next season, so definitely keep an ear to the ground for that. But for Stefen, for Jay, for Jake, for myself, we've been Hockey Night in New York. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.